Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sunny Go One Piece podcast. On this episode, we're going to be getting into episodes 728 through 730, which will cover manga chapters, 785 or one page of 785 through half of 788. So this is going to be a shorter episode since it covers so little material, but we are now in the final home stretch of the Dressrosa conflict. Alright, so synopsis. With Luffy exhausted and unable to fight for the next 10 minutes, the birdcage continues to close in, threatening everyone on the island. It's now up to everyone to come together to hold off Doflamingo and the birdcage to give Luffy enough time that he needs to recover his haki as it becomes a deadly cat and mouse game of keep away from Doflamingo. Alright, so differences. There aren't so many differences, it's just that every scene is just incredibly elongated, and this is where a lot of the memes come from with One Piece and sort of its pacing, where you see a lot of reactions from people and just random scenes just taking forever. So the first main difference is there's a moment added in the anime where Doflamingo uses the strings to ensnare Luffy in a tower of strings, and Luffy explodes out of it screaming, "It won't work," kind of as a callback to early One Piece, particularly East Blue, where he'd deflect bullets and yell the same thing. But this, along with Luffy deflecting and dodging several break white attacks from Doflamingo, those are all filler. The only one that's canon is when Doflamingo says "die already" and uses the billow white attack, and Luffy busts through that with his head. Even then, it's extended. And in the manga, just after this headbutt, he immediately does Leo Bazooka instead of flying around dodging more attacks. They literally took 6 pages and extended it out to more than like 2/3 of an episode, which is kind of why there's so little material covered in these episodes, because they managed to stretch out like panels or a page into literally half of an episode, which is it's insane. The pacing is just awful. And it's getting worse as Dressrosa continues. But yeah, that was just kind of the reality at this time, because the anime was beginning to it was starting to catch up to the manga for sure, because Dressrosa just had nowhere to actually introduce any actual filler episodes or to buy time. They did introduce a few breaks, but at the same time, during this time, Oda did take breaks himself. So even if the manga or the anime started to try and separate itself, Oda would need breaks because of his declining health. And you'll see this becoming more an issue as the series goes on, particularly these days, right now in the present, in the year 2025. He is taking a lot more breaks. He's producing a lot fewer chapters per year. And so, yeah, this issue is becoming more of a problem. But recently, Toei Animation has announced that they will now go to a seasonal model to kind of help combat this issue where Oda isn't producing as many chapters per year. And so what they're doing is they're basically only producing 26 episodes per year, and that'll give time for the manga to extend its lead and also give Oda some time to rest, as well as the anime not having to sacrifice the pacing to accommodate this. And so, yeah, both, I think it's a good thing overall. It kind of sucks that the pacing has to be such a sort of victim of all of this circumstance. But yeah, this is around when the pacing just gets ridiculously bad for One Piece. Like up until now, it's bad, but it was somewhat tolerable. Dressrosa, the second half of Dressrosa is really where it becomes like just a meme-worthy, like bad pacing. Trying to get back on track in terms of the differences. There isn't really much of a change per se on the next one, but after Doflamingo begins to kind of hasten the closing of the birdcage, we see a much more extended snippet of Sabo versus Burgess, where in the manga, this is literally just one tiny panel. It's like an 1 by 2 inch panel of Sabo punching Burgess. But in the anime, it's like a couple minutes long with actual dialogue and everything and several fight moves that happen. And so things like this happen all over. I'm not going to point out every single instance of this because the most of them aren't all that significant. But yeah, you'll notice, like, if you've read both the manga and watch the anime for this particular section, you'll know that there are just a ton of little added scenes. Like, for example, another scene that they do add that I haven't really noted here is they show a little snippet of Manchuri's, her little dandelions, her healing dandelions, flying and floating above the Colosseum warriors. You don't actually see that, and it's actually a surprise when they do show up later on, because you didn't know that they got healed. But in the anime, they make it pretty clear, oh, they're healed now. Now they're going to show up. And so I think overall it doesn't really change much. But yeah, that's kind of one of the few sort of casualties of this era of One Piece anime. All right, so those are kind of the two big changes that I guess I wanted to mention. The rest, again, are all really minuscule that I don't want to go into each one of them. So let's get into the episodes themselves. So with Luffy running out of time, he has to go in for the finisher on Doflamingo, but he won't let him have it that easy. But Luffy using his head, literally, to break through Doflamingo's strings by coating his entire head and face, similar to Virgo, and lands his most powerful Gear 4th attack yet, the Gear 4th version of Gomu Gomu no Bazooka with Gomu Gomu no Leo Bazooka. And this attack, thankfully, the anime actually animates with some force, and it lands with the impact it deserves, which was awesome to see. And on a side note, Leo means lion in Latin, so it kind of continues that sort of animal theming. And this seems like Luffy has defeated Doflamingo, but something doesn't quite feel right. And then Law points out the chilling reality that the birdcage has yet to go away, meaning Doflamingo is not only still conscious, but has the strength to keep it going. Unfortunately, Luffy is out of time. He needs to get one more hit on Doflamingo, but Luffy has finally reached his limit and returns to his base form. The situation has gone from incredibly hopeful to incredibly dire, as not only is Doflamingo still alive, but the last episode it was revealed that Burgess is still hanging around, and he's out for Luffy's Gomu Gomu no fruit and wants to kill him for it. And this was interesting to hear because we all know how at Marineford, Blackbeard was able to steal Whitebeard's Gura Gura fruit. So apparently he can do this to anyone, and they've seemingly been looking for devil fruits, including Luffy's, and we get confirmation of this from Sabo later on, saying that Blackbeard has been kind of hunting devil fruits to make his crew stronger. So he must have some mechanism to extract the fruit, otherwise killing him and the other victims there, then and there, would just recirculate the fruit somewhere, having to resume the search elsewhere. But in any case, very interesting because Burgess was originally after the Meta fruit, so Blackbeard seemingly is just going after powerful devil fruits and stealing them, and Whitebeard's fruit was just kind of the beginning of it. It wasn't just an isolated incident, which was kind of surprising to me, actually. I don't know what I expected, but I guess I didn't really expect Blackbeard to just continue using it. I thought it was kind of a one-time thing, so it was really interesting to see Blackbeard continue to hunt down devil fruits and steal them from people, and by murdering them, essentially, which is exactly what he does to Thatch as well, just that Thatch hadn't eaten the yummy yummy fruit yet. So Blackbeard has a habit of doing that. Similar to the scene at Fishman Island, we have the regular people all contemplating how to view Luffy. They're all wrestling with the preconceived notion that all pirates are evil and not to be trusted, versus what they're actually seeing before their eyes, a good person who is trying to help them. And this theme has always been present in One Piece, but Oda has really been hammering this idea home in our minds for a while now, as if he's building towards something bigger, because he is really going out of his way to hammer this point home quite frequently, especially in the post-time skip era. We all know there will come a time when the people of the world will have to decide how they will view both sides and see that it isn't black and white. There are good Marines and there are evil ones. Similarly, there are evil pirates and good ones as well. And it will be up to the people to decide individually what they believe. And I believe this will have a major impact in the story where, again, Dressrosa seems like kind of a microcosm of what could potentially happen later on in the story, where everyone has to kind of come together in the world, not just like Dressrosa, to take down not Doflamingo, but the eventual, world government. And so I think that will definitely play into it. And we did discuss this kind of in the spoiler sections and in a couple episodes past, how that Doflamingo and the world government connection kind of plays together. But yeah, Oda gives us a sense of what his goal with this thematic through line is in the following scene. Doflamingo is not down and very much ready to fight, while Luffy is exhausted and on the ground. with two formidable threats now after him in Doflamingo and Burgess. And this fight really makes you realize just how crazy these guys are. And even still, there are emperors above Doflamingo, and which is nuts to think about. Like, this is bad though, like really bad for Luffy. Luffy is completely out of strength, and you begin to see many people running away now, realizing that Luffy can't protect them, while saying things like, "Don't get involved with the pirates." But out of nowhere, Gats, the Coliseum announcer, grabs Luffy as he collapses and helps him, following his hunch that Luffy was in fact Lucy, and he stays offering Luffy help in any way he can, putting himself at risk, which is, this guy quietly has become one of my, well, quietly is probably the wrong word because he talks a lot, but yeah, he's just like, just out of nowhere, he's becoming another one of my favorite characters in Dressrosa. Luffy tells him that he needs 10 minutes to rest and recover his haki, and then he can finish the fight. And this right here is the crux of it. There will always be people that distrust or even hate pirates, but in order for the world to be lifted from the control of the world government, ordinary people will need to decide for themselves individually which side they believe is right, based on what they see, not blindly relying on labels. And I promise you, near the end of the climax here, there will come a time when Luffy and the Straw Hats will eventually need the help of ordinary citizens to help them overcome the might of the world government. And time again, ordinary people coming together, willing to fight for what's right alongside Luffy and the Straw Hats, regardless of the fact that they're pirates, has been something that's been present pretty much ever since the beginning of the story, particularly with like situations with Kobe and Shell's Town and all of that. So yeah, this is definitely something that Oda is building towards. And it's such an awesome moment seeing Gats rallying the other unnamed Coliseum warriors to offer to buy time that Luffy needs, despite how terrifying of an opponent Doflamingo is. Like, Doflamingo has never been scarier at this moment. Like, he is just ridiculously terrifying. Like, if you were somebody on the ground watching this unfold and seeing Doflamingo just furiously like walking towards you, yeah, I would definitely poop my pants. And as awesome as it is to see Luffy kick ass with Gear 4th, it's moments like these that really get my emotions going and are just some of my favorites. Like, I will say this, like, from here on out, this is some of my favorite One Piece, like, content. The inspirational moments of people working together and helping each other to overcome insurmountable odds. Like, I love it. And it sucks that we won't get through all of this in these trio of episodes, but trust me, from here until the end of Dressrosa, it is awesome and so hype and so emotional and just so, I don't know, it gets you in the feels for sure. But Doflamingo isn't the only thing they need to protect Luffy from during these crucial 10 minutes, because Burgess has now caught up to them and is looking to kill Luffy as well. But luckily, and very fittingly, Sabo comes in for the save on Burgess. Naturally, this is a very meaningful thing for Sabo, as he wasn't able to save Ace both times during Ace's duel on Banaro Island with Blackbeard, as well as on Marineford. So for him, not only to be able to protect his other brother Luffy, as well as get some payback for the Blackbeard's role in Ace's fate, even though he doesn't necessarily blame them for Ace's death, is very fitting. Not to mention, this is a very interesting matchup, as Burgess is built up to be one of the strongest members of the Blackbeard Pirates, as he is considered the first Titanic captain, meaning he's essentially like the second in command almost, like Blackbeard's Zoro in terms of power scaling, I guess. Except Burgess doesn't seem to be able to use armament haki, which is surprising, as he whiffs Sabo, knowing full well he's got the Logia fruit. And yeah, this was really interesting, but this scene is so much like Sabo reassuring Luffy that he was able to eat Ace's Meta fruit, and Sabo taking on Burgess to keep him busy while they deal with Doflamingo. This is such a great moment. But my favorite part is how neither of them can get Gats' name right. Luffy exhaustedly yet sincerely calling him Cats was generally hysterical, and then that being followed up with Sabo calling him Pets is just too funny. I almost did a spit take when Luffy calls him Cats, just because he says it in that like Like, he's not saying it to be funny or anything. He genuinely is saying this from the bottom of his heart, like thanking him, when he just calls him cats. It's just so funny. But on the other side of the city, Zoro, Kinemon, and Kanjuro finally make it to the edge of the birdcage. And Zoro does what he does and does, he just brute forces his way to a solution, as he literally just uses haki-coated swords to straight up push against the closing cage. And I really like this scene because it really highlights the difference in mentality between a person who has absolute resolve and someone with learned helplessness. Zoro, despite how impossible an obstacle, he just gets right to work, believing that there has to be a way to beat it. And even if it isn't, it's better than just sitting there crying about it, which is very consistent with his character over the years, which even Robin comments on. And it's a philosophy that I have always tried to utilize in my life as well. Rather than kind of sitting around doing nothing, crying about how impossible something is, if I want something done, it's better to just take a step forward and try rather than already accepting defeat and not even trying. And I love this. And I don't always follow it. I do fall into that sort of learned helplessness sometimes. I am human. But it's like, why not try and do something? Like, what's the alternative here? Just sit there and fail? It's the same result. You're going to fail one way or the other. Except the latter, at least there's a slim chance of a better outcome that might happen. And Frankie also does his part by rallying the Tontara and using the Sea Stone Factory to use as a buffer to also push back the birdcage too. Now, I will give Kinemon and Kanjuro a bit of slack though, because there kind of is a reason to sort of their learned helplessness, as we will learn much, much later on in the story. Maybe I'll talk about this in the spoiler section, but yeah, I would give them a little bit of slack on this. But meanwhile, all the citizens are trying to find anywhere safe that they can hide as the birdcage continues to close in on them even faster. But that puts them in direct opposition to the remnants of the Don Quixote family grunts, who are trying to maintain power over the people. But in an awesome reversal, the Colosseum warriors, now temporarily healed due to Manchuri's life support ability. But at this point, Doflamingo has grown tired of chasing Luffy and has begun to hasten the closing of the birdcage to flush him out. And things are becoming increasingly desperate as people who were barely holding on aren't able to outrun the cage, and it becomes harder and harder to push the cage back. But then something amazing starts to play out, as this is the beginning of what would be one of my favorite stretches in the arc, and maybe even the series too. In particular, this conflict, it's especially really good. Luffy still has 4 minutes left at this point, so everyone starts to get in on pushing the cage to hold it off for just a tiny bit longer to buy him as much time as he needs to rest. Bartolomeo creates a massive barrier wall that they can push, and Robin, as well as the remaining Colosseum warriors, all begin to push back while Manchuri continues to heal everyone from above while the entire country fights back to survive. And this was such an amazing and emotional moment, just seeing everyone coming together, doing their part to try and save it, the country that they love. Even Law gets back in the fight a little bit, despite how injured and drained he is, saying that he'll take over protecting Luffy, which, given his powers to shambles all over the place, will be much better for running and hiding. But I love that Law actually gets to take a part in sort of the final portions of these battles, because yeah, this is as much his fight as it is Luffy's. But with only 3 minutes left till Luffy supposedly recovering his haki, things are getting really dire. But with everybody working together, they might still have a chance. But I hate that I have to stop here, because my favorite moment are still yet to come in the next episode as we approach the climax of the Dressrosa arc. And I absolutely love the next several episodes. Every time I rewatch or reread Dressrosa, I kind of forget just how freaking amazing the ending to Dressrosa is and how moved I am by it every time. And it's something that I don't often do, because Dressrosa, especially the anime, the pacing is just so bad. It's hard to kind of get through Dressrosa sometimes. The manga is a little bit easier, but even then, Dressrosa is so long, I don't have as much time to keep rereading as much as I do some of the other arcs. But trust me, Dressrosa, it gets a lot of crap for the terrible pacing and the terrible animation, but Dressrosa is one of the best arcs in the entire series, and I hate that it gets lost in the shuffle because so many people crap on it because of sort of the quality of it, not so much the storytelling. But yeah, I know this is a shorter episode because yeah, there just wasn't as much material, but we'll have to close it out there. Hopefully, we'll have a lot more to talk about in the next episode. But if you did enjoy this one, send me a like or comment. And if you want to join me on this journey of rewatching One Piece, please consider subscribing. All of that really helps out a lot. Check out my Instagram at SunnyGo Podcast if you want updates on when I post new episodes and to see pictures of my manga collection. Check those out. And as always, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. Just this tiny spoiler section. But if you're not interested in that, stay safe out there, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Bye. Alrighty, so spoiler section. Yeah, just a couple of random things I wanted to talk about. I guess I'll talk about the Kinemon and Kanjuro thing. So we know Kanjuro, obviously he's a bad guy. But yeah, Kinemon's reaction here, I can't quite blame him because obviously he's been through a lot up until now, and he's seen basically his version of what's happening on Dressrosa with what happened in Wano with Kaido and everything. He knows how desperate this is and how just how hard it is to fight back against a power like this. And I think that learned helplessness comes from the fact that he's seen so much failure and just being stamped out by some power that's just well above him. And so yeah, I can kind of understand this reaction from Kinemon, and I can't really blame him. But I love that the Straw Hats now have sort of reinvigorated that in Kinemon, and I think that carries through to when he gets to Zou and through when they actually get to Wano. Like, he's ready to put everything and all of his faith into the Straw Hats, and I think that's an amazing growth that you see over time. And it's very subtle because it's spread out over such a long period of time, over multiple arcs, and even Wano itself is so long. But yeah, I do like to see that change in Kinemon. So I like that there's this little moment that kind of not necessarily foreshadows, but just kind of shows where Kinemon starts and where he ends up later on. And I like going back and seeing these little moments. The next thing I kind of wanted to talk about is with Blackbeard. So yeah, with the recent revelations in, by the way, this is spoilers for really current One Piece. So chapter 1165 is where we're at right now. And so if you do not want to know anything about that, definitely stop listening for sure. But yeah, so now that we've gone through God Valley and we know about Rocks and his ambitions of wanting both what presumably the two fruits that he wants, I think everybody kind of assumes that it's both the Hito-Hitonomi, the Model Nika, and the Yami Yami fruit. He needed both of those fruits to basically take down Imu. And I think one of the reasons why Burgess's ears perked up when the chance to take Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi, I think Burgess actually knows about the fact that it's not the Gomu Gomu no Mi and that it is the Hito-Hitonomi. And so, yeah, I do think that Blackbeard knows about the secret and the fact that his father wanted both of those fruits. So I think seeing the chance to take down Luffy and get the Gomu Gomu no Mi for his captain is something that really interests him. And obviously, they want just strong fruits overall. But I think this in particular was a big find for Burgesson, which is why his attitude changes about, instead of going after the Mera fruit, he wants the Gomu Gomu fruit because it's so readily available there. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see that sort of, whether that's intentional or not, I don't know, but it still fits with everything. The last thing I kind of wanted to mention, this doesn't really matter much, but I always find it kind of interesting how the one Doflamingo family grunt that's kind of holding the citizens up just before Bartolomeo slams him on the head with the Bari Bari no pistol. That guy looks awful lot like Judge, Sanji's father. I don't know. It looks almost exactly like him. There's no connection between them as far as I know, but I think Oda just kind of liked this design and reused it for Judge, and it just made him bigger and a little bit more, I don't know, older. But yeah, I couldn't help but notice how clearly that guy looks a lot like Judge, or Vinsmoke Judge. And so yeah, it's just kind of a random observation that I had. But anyways, those are the kind of the few spoiler things that I kind of wanted to talk about. I guess like since it is spoiler section, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, but I just can't not talk about it. Like, I love the moment when Fujitora shows up behind Zoro, Kinemon, and Kanjuro, and instead of attacking them, he just takes out his sword and joins them in stopping the wall. Like, I love Fujitora so much, and I cannot wait to talk about that moment in the next episode. To the point where, yeah, I'm mentioning it in the spoiler section of this episode because it's pointless to talk about that since I'm going to talk about it later. But yeah, I love that moment so much, and including the part that follows where everyone else joins and starts pushing the wall. Like when Usopp basically tells all the regular people to, like, anyone who's able and has strength, go to the east or west sides of the birdcage and just start pushing. And yeah, that moment is so good. And then obviously, yeah, all the other stuff surrounding it. But anyways, we'll get into that in the next episode. But yeah, I love that. I love the ending of Dressrosa. It's so cool. Anyways, thanks for listening to me ramble on about this. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next episode. See ya.